From the St. Louis Public Radio Newsroom, this is The Gateway. It's Friday, March 8th. I'm Jonathan Ahl. Southern Illinois voters will likely decide who ends up representing them in Congress during this month's Republican primary. In the heavily GOP district, voters will pick between incumbent Mike Bost.
I am a conservative, and my voting record shows that I'm a conservative.
And former GOP gubernatorial nominee Darren Bailey.
As a Republican and as a conservative Republican, I cannot compromise my values.
Coming up on The Gateway, Will Bauer will take a look at the candidates and what they want to do for the 12th Congressional District. A St. Louis jury has found the man whose car crash severed a teen girl's legs guilty on 4 counts and recommended a prison sentence of more than 18 years. 22-year-old Daniel Riley had drugs in his system and rapidly accelerated through a yield sign downtown last year, causing a crash that injured Tennessee teenager Janae Edmondson, who was in St. Louis for a volleyball tournament. Riley was out on bond in a gun case at the time of the crash, despite having violated the terms of his release multiple times. The incident was the catalyst that led to the resignation of Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner. The judge will decide in April whether to accept the jury's recommendations. The Missouri House yesterday passed a supplemental budget bill containing funding for Governor Mike Parson's plan to send troops to the Texas-Mexico border. As St. Louis Public Radio's Sarah Kellogg reports, for some lawmakers, the bill didn't represent an endorsement of Parson's plan.
Members voted 122 to 12 to send the bill to the Senate. While the state does have existing funding for this request, Parson asked for roughly $2.2 million in a supplemental budget bill to backfill that funding. According to Parson, the initial deployment of the troops will last at least 90 days, but could be extended. Democratic Representative Betsy Fogel, who voted for the legislation, said the question of the bill wasn't whether to send the troops to Texas. That was happening with or without the passage of this bill.
The question that we're asking today is, do we want to give an additional $2 million, knowing that the troops are already going to go in case another crisis like a tornado or some other natural disaster hits our state?
Parson has said the troops are needed to help secure the border. In Jefferson City, I'm Sarah Kellogg, St. Louis Public Radio.
Funding for 6 St. Louisans who live near radioactive waste cleared a hurdle by passing the U.S. Senate yesterday. The chamber voted to pass the Radiation Exposure Compensation Reauthorization Act. The funding is set to expire in June. It does not currently include parts of St. Louis, but would in the version that passed. Missouri Republican Senator Josh Hawley introduced the bill.
This isn't about a handout. This isn't about some kind of welfare program. This is about doing basic justice by the working people of this nation, whom their own government has poisoned.
The bill now heads to the U.S. House of Representatives. Hawley says he has spoken with colleagues there to advocate for the legislation. A St. Louis alderwoman is proposing major changes in how homeless shelters are approved in the city. St. Louis Public Radio's Jason Rosenbaum reports that the idea is still drawing skepticism from neighborhood associations.
If someone wants to open a homeless shelter in St. Louis, they need to get 51% of signatures from residents within a 500-foot radius. Alderwoman Alicia Saulnier's bill would drop that requirement to 25% and require several hearings before a shelter is permanently approved. While some neighborhood associations spoke against this change, Saulnier says she's also heard support from residents to increase shelter capacity.
The goal of this process is to have a process that immerses community and that vets the shelter so that it operates in the best interest of those receiving the services and in that community. We're failing.
Saulnier's bill needs to be voted out by an aldermanic committee to be heard by the full Board of Aldermen. I'm Jason Rosenbaum, St. Louis Public Radio.
The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission has ordered Spire to repair lasting damage from the construction of its controversial natural gas pipeline in southern Illinois. This week's decision from the commission applies to more than a dozen private properties along the 65-mile route. Landowners have complained the construction of the Spire STL pipeline left behind wooden chunks, caused erosion and drainage issues, and hurt crop yields, among other problems. Spire says the action this week is an important step toward fully repairing the damage from the pipeline's construction. Research and data suggest that black girls in U.S. public schools are disciplined more harshly than white girls. A study in the Journal of Black Psychology that's co-authored by a Washington University professor finds that programming for black girls can boost self-esteem and helps with racial trauma. St. Louis Public Radio's Andrea Henderson reports.
WashU professor Shauna Leith and other researchers interviewed 16 teenage girls in Tennessee for their new study, which focused on identity, mental health, and academic success. Researchers found that spaces that foster community and racial healing can build self-love and inspire Black girls. Cynthia Steele is founder of St. Louis nonprofit Black Girls Do STEM. She says Black girls should be able to be themselves while enjoying academics.
Black kids in St. Louis really need space so that we can reinforce, regardless of your socioeconomics. There is a place for you to go out into this world and dream just as big.
Steele says the region needs more programming that allows Black girls to sit in their feelings without being disciplined. I'm Andrea Henderson, St. Louis Public Radio.
In the GOP primary race to represent Southern Illinois in Congress, incumbent Mike Bost is being challenged by Darren Bailey. The two Republicans have tried to differentiate themselves despite having similar policy positions. How are they different, and what are their priorities for the 12th Congressional District? St. Louis Public Radio's Will Bauer reports.
At a recent campaign event in Belleville, Mike Bost made his pitch to voters, preaching experience and pragmatism.
I have referred to myself over and over again as a governing conservative.
He says that means he's still deeply conservative. However, he's not willing to hold up Congress for politics. He's been saying that a lot this campaign season. He wants to show he's different than his opponent. Meanwhile, at a campaign stop in Millstadt, Bailey casts himself to voters as a political outsider and Bost an insider.
The swamp protects the swamp. I thought it couldn't get any worse than what I witnessed in Springfield. Out here in D.C., you've got everybody coalescing together, and it makes me sick.
On national issues, both Bost and Bailey have more in common. They both say their top issue this election is the southern border with Mexico. But beyond that, the two hold similar yet slightly different priorities for the district. On the campaign trail, Bost has been hammering home his chairmanship of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs. The district includes much of Scott Air Force Base and surrounding communities. That means there are 52,000 veterans of voting age. At the Belleville event, Bost supporter and Air Force veteran Jim Wolf says the congressman's chairmanship and advocacy for veteran issues are important.
He's a veteran. He's transparent. He addresses our issues. He's not a gamesman. As I heard him today, he talked about his strengths and accomplishments and never said a negative thing about his competitor.
If Bost wins a sixth term in Congress, he said he'd like to continue chairing Veterans Affairs. On the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, Bost said he'd like to get some money allocated for locks and levees on the Mississippi River north of St. Louis. To the south, the locks are big enough so that full barges can pass through. But to the north, the locks are smaller, and the barges need to be broken up to pass, which is why Bost says they're in need of federal funds.
Modernizing them for faster transportation and greater payload to be moved through the lock at any given time.
In addition, Bost said the largely rural 12th District could use a new farm bill, and he says maybe one with more subsidies for farmers during rough years. Speaking of farmers, Bailey farms in southeastern Illinois. The former state lawmaker, Bailey gained statewide notoriety running for governor 2 years ago. Bailey will be winning the vote of Rebecca Keim of Columbia. She says Bailey is the more conservative candidate in this race.
I have voted for Mike Bost in the past, and he's not near as conservative as it's perceived, and I'm very conservative.
If Keim's candidate gets elected, he said 3 House committees would be good fits for him. First, Energy and Commerce, because the 12th District has lots of coal mining and oil drilling. Second, Education and Workforce, because he served on his local school board for 17 years. And third, Agriculture, because obviously Bailey's a farmer. For starters, he'd like to do a little education on the Farm Bill.
A lot of people think that, for instance, farmers, farm for government payments. That's simply not true.
But specifics on certain policy issues may be irrelevant in this race. Former President Donald Trump endorsed Bost over Bailey last month. Given Trump's dominance over the National Party, the endorsement makes Bailey an underdog. However, he says nothing changes.
Being a farmer, if you miss that rain, you realize, okay, crops might not be as good as they could have been, but I got to work a little harder and make it up somewhere. That's exactly how I believe at the end of the day, March 19th is going to turn out.
There's another factor that makes Bailey an underdog in this race: money. At the end of last year, Bost had outraised Bailey 6-1. I'm Will Bauer, St. Louis Public Radio.
Our Fred Ehrlich edited that report. Finally, this morning, each March, downtown St. Louis comes alive with the buzz of basketball. The Missouri Valley Conference has hosted its men's basketball championship in town for more than 3 decades. This year's tournament is currently underway at the Enterprise Center. St. Louis Public Radio's Brian Munoz and Eric Lee asked fans what makes Hoops in the Valley so special.
My name is Allison Staples. I'm originally from Peoria, Illinois, but I've lived in St. Louis for about 13 years now, and I'm rooting for the Bradley Braves. I love college basketball to start with, and my husband and I have been going here since we were in college, and it's always a great environment, always a great level of competition.
My name is Jim Meese. I live in Dunlap, Illinois, which is just outside of Peoria, and today I am cheering for Illinois State University.
My name is Jennifer Cornelison. I'm from Murray, Kentucky, and I'm here to cheer on the Murray State Racers. We're a small community, but we have a big basketball team, and that's our entertainment. We love following the team, and they've kind of become our family.
My name is Josh Lee. We're from Carterville, Illinois, and we're rooting for Southern Illinois Salukis. I just think it's the competitiveness, the defense that's played, the heart and soul that's put into the time and effort of the teams. It's just something I've grown up around and I've been involved with, and it's just something that's always will stick with me for the rest of my life.
My name is Lynn Adams, and right now I've got my granddaughter Penny, and we're here to root for the Indiana State Sycamores.
Yeah, we're looking for popcorn.
We're looking for popcorn, is what she said. I've got a passion for basketball anyway, and for, ISU, but I love the Missouri Valley. I like the underdogs. I like that we are not ever considered, as good as the other ones, but then when we go to the dance, our teams always advance most of the time, so it's just exciting.
Go Sycamores.
To see photos of these fans and more from the tournament, visit stlpr.org. The Gateway is a production of St. Louis Public Radio, a member-supported service of the University of Missouri, St. Louis. Music by Ryan McNeely of Adult Fur. Aula Kaziz produced today's episode. From the St. Louis Public Radio newsroom, this has been The Gateway. I'm Jonathan Ahl. Have a great weekend.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.